stuff. And whatever's going on in his brain, you know it is 100% Bridget!
Wait, I forgot to unmute myself. All right, here I am. It's me talking about something. Today, I got a friend with me. His name is Chris. You've heard me talk about him a couple of times on the podcast here. And he has the podcast.
The co-parenting roller coaster.
the co-parenting roller That's all right. It's all right. It's all good. So yes, Chris Urian with the co-parenting roller coaster. You've heard me talk about him several times before in the past, and so we decided to bring him on. Right on. So I'm going to let him introduce himself. Tell us a little bit about the podcast and the stuff that you do.
Okay. So yeah, I'm Chris. I've been doing the co-parenting roller coaster now for right about 3.5 to 4 months, I think. Yeah, right about 4 months. So it's something that kind of I am a divorced, remarried parent, and being a divorced, remarried parent, I came into my marriage with a child, and my wife came into the marriage with a child. So being a step parent at the same time as being a parent, and parenting with somebody who you're not in a relationship with my daughter's mom, it presents a lot of unique circumstances, things that I hate to say it this way, but normal families don't have to face. And what I started to realize is the more people I talk to, the more common of a situation it was to either have stepchildren or be a single parent going into another relationship, whether that would be, ultimately being married or so being the step parent or being the parent who's having to deal with now a step parent on the other side. So in my situation, my daughter's mom is engaged, and so my daughter essentially has 4 parents between my household, and her household. This will probably be the only time that I call him my stepson this whole time, because it's really not something that I don't refer to him that way. He's my son.
Right.
His biological dad didn't meet him until this year, and he will be 9 next month.
Wow. Okay.
So he's my son. So I won't say stepson again, but in that issue with my son, it's just me and Lindsay. It's just me and my wife. We don't really have any relationship with his biological father.
Okay.
He's met him a couple of times, spent a little bit of time with him, but it's not like a relationship that's ongoing or where we have to have constant communication with him.
Right.
Where with my daughter, she's 50-50. She's at my house 2 nights a week, at her mom's house 2 nights a week, and then Friday, Saturday, Sundays.
And you have to communicate back and forth, school, all that jazz.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Which has been really fun this year with COVID and distance learning, and it's presented some unique challenges. So that was kind of I felt this. I just felt it on my heart, and you kind of know it's a God thing when I don't consider myself a super creative person. So when I had an idea, I was like, oh, okay, well, that works.
Yeah.
And then I had a name come to me for a podcast. I was like, okay, well, that's not me. Maybe this is part of what is supposed to be my ministry, or what is supposed to be part of my purpose. I've gone through some things, and now I'm learning that more people have gone through these things. So if I can share whatever the situation is, if I can share and bring some healing to somebody else, or somebody else here and give me some feedback, I just felt like it was kind of my calling to start sharing my story. And I didn't know what medium that was going to be until actually it's your fault.
It's my fault.
It's your fault. Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Well,
you have to listen to him because of me.
Yeah. You know what though? It's funny because I had talked about potentially doing a podcast for a while, and I know I had told you that I had this idea and I was going to do it, and I bought a USB microphone to use with my computer, and I was like, I'm going to do this thing, and then nothing happened. And I'm like, no, I can't do it yet. Or do I want to do video? Do I want to do this? Do I want to do that? And and then you started this podcast.
Yeah.
And I saw it and I was like, dang it.
Stole it from
He
me.
beat me to it. I was like, all right, now he's got that ball rolling. Now it's my turn. I gotta get the ball rolling.
Right on.
So,
No, we I started this actually because I shut down a church. So I spent about 2 years, which is actually in the meantime I met you in the process, and I went back to my old church that I used to attend, and kind of sat in some depression because I think you've probably noticed the difference about how I've been lately compared to when I showed up at Generations Church over there in Temecula.
At first you were just sitting through service.
Yeah.
And slowly started
kind of like had to reboot myself.
Yeah.
And so and I had told my wife, maybe I should just start a podcast or something back when we shut down this old church that I was part of. And then you mentioned the podcast, and that's what shot it back into my brain. But I was like, well, how do I do that? And luckily, oh, by the way, we're in my brother's studio because he does voiceovers, and he let us borrow his space today because they turned the power off at my house. So if it looks different, that's why. So just a little different.
Yeah.
No belts in the background.
And we had to fit the two of us on screen, so we had to have enough room.
a little bit bigger space. I thought the camera took away 10 pounds.
I don't think so.
Okay, so now we're both doing this, and I think this is podcasting is one of those mediums, and especially right now with COVID, a lot of people have they've popped up all over the place.
Yeah,
and I don't know if it came out of boredom. But I think if you feel you're called to something, then you should just do it.
Yeah.
And I don't think, now I get in trouble from the church from this, but just because your pastor doesn't have to tell you what your calling is, and you don't have to bring it by him. If you believe God talked to you and told you what to do, go do it. That's my personal opinion, and for you to step out and actually talk about something that is so huge. When I had my wife on, we talked about the percentages and the statistics of marriage, and about 50, I think it's up to 51% of all marriages fail.
Yeah.
And 50% of all marriages in Christian life fail.
Right.
So there's an issue there, which means that 50% of the people are possibly running around co-parenting.
Right.
Co-parenting
or step parenting. When you move into another.
Blended families, because not everybody gets divorced in the first 3 years. Some people get divorced after they've had teenage kids. They've had 5-year-olds, 2-year-olds, 1-year-old, no-year-old. Divorced during pregnancy. Things like that, where a parent may never know your olds.
Or you end up like me, and we did things backwards. She was pregnant, said we need to get married. We ended up married before my daughter was born. But
okay, yeah.
we did things a little backwards.
Well,
and
that's what I did.
I wasn't in church at the time.
Okay. Well,
that was when I decided to do things my own way, which is a bad idea.
Yeah, that's a bad idea.
It's horrible.
I think that's one of the things that most people don't really understand is that men, we're two men sitting here. Men need to actually, if we're going to go through that process, whether we know Jesus or don't know Jesus, we should at least man up and take care of the child, whether it's through co-parenting, whether it's, some way, shape, or form, at the bare minimum. Financially, that's a whole nother window. I don't want to go there, to be honest with you, because I've seen some people go through just a wreck with finances and having multiple, having a blended relationship and blended families. But my daughter's in that position. So she's dating somebody. She's not actually married right now, but she has 2 kids, one from him and one from an old relationship.
Okay.
So she has to deal with a second mom, a second dad, and all that stuff. The child's now moving back and forth between two locations all the time,
right,
and 2 different styles of parenting. So I'm going to ask a question now because the one just popped in my head.
Okay.
Is when you have to deal with 2 different styles of parenting when your child's gone for like a week at the other mom's house, how is that putting it back to the way you do things at home?
There is always, and it's 100% dependent. So like I said, the court system here in California, I don't know the court system everywhere else, but they have different parenting plans. So the one that we're doing, is actually like we agreed on it outside of court because our court agreement is not what we're doing now. But it's called like a 5-2-2, basically because they're 2 days, then 5 days.
Okay.
Right. So like every other week I have her for 5 days straight. Every other week her mom has her for 5 days straight. So the weeks that she's just with her mom for 2 days are different. She comes back differently than when she's with her mom for 5 days.
Okay.
And there's usually an adjustment period. My wife, Lindsay does the majority of the parenting. I work, she stays at home.
Okay.
And so she's the one that kind of catches the brunt of my daughter coming back with an attitude.
Yeah, coming back a little bit differently.
Yeah,
okay.
or you know, she just they're run differently, and it's not to say that my house is better or her mom's house is better. It's we have different styles.
Yeah.
We handle things differently, and yeah, there's always an adjustment period, and there are times. Recently, we kind of adjust. Luckily, we're cooperative.
Okay,
So
that's what I was just about to say. Are you communicating?
Oh, yeah.
You know, say, hey, this is what we do at home, and let's try to do at least a couple of things the same in
Yeah.
comparison.
yeah, and usually if there's a big issue, she'll text me and say, hey, you got a minute to talk, and we'll talk. And the cool thing about that too is that there's a 100% open line of communication with us.
Okay.
So we had a situation at the beginning of this month where I had my weekend with her, and then the next weekend she was supposed to go back. She was supposed to be at her mom's. Well, I got a call Thursday night from my sister who lives 500 miles away. Hey, what are you doing Saturday morning? We're gonna be in town for so and so's wedding. Do you guys think you could just come by the hotel? We'll hang out for a couple hours or whatever before the wedding. Well, it wasn't supposed to be my weekend. I had my daughter, but I was able to talk to her mom and go, look, I know it's supposed to be your weekend, so I'll have her 2 weekends in a row if you let me keep her so that she can see her, my 2 nephews,
Yeah,
my
yeah.
niece, her aunt, because we don't get to see them maybe twice a year on a good year. Some years
Okay.
it's once a year, some years it's none. It just depends on if
And
anybody
then,
makes
and
that
then
trip.
that way she gets an opportunity to meet family,
Spend some family time.
more family.
Right. Yeah. So luckily, like in that situation, I was able to tell her that, and then I told her, okay, you take the next 2 weekends. I had her 2 weekends in a row. You take her the next 2, and then we'll just go back to normal flip flopping. So this weekend, is back to
Yeah, we go back.
now we're back to normal, but it's
I would listening to all that is the basis of that is really the bottom line is communicating.
oh yeah.
Yeah. So
Oh, yeah.
without communication, what would you say happens? Okay, so if it was just I'm going to drop my kid off at the McDonald's, you pick him up at the McDonald's, and there's no communication at all, what would you say to a parent that has to deal with that?
Pray.
Okay.
Because it sounds a little sarcastic, but until I started really praying about my situation, that was my situation.
Okay.
I went through when I got divorced, I ended up in another relationship. Not super quick, but probably about 6-7 months later, and oh, she's the one, that kind of thing.
Okay. Yeah.
And so we moved in together. She starts playing stepmom, and her and my daughter's mom did not get along.
Okay.
And that was actually during our divorce. And so, I'm getting advice from this side, which I've talked about that on my podcast. Sometimes you got to just be careful where you take advice from.
Yeah.
And, but the advice that I took made the relationship really bad. Where at first we were able to, me and my girlfriend and her son at the time, we were able to go down, pick my daughter up, come home. And while we were going through court, everything just turned bad. And then it turned into no third parties at pickups. So it was just me and her mom and
Okay.
my daughter. So, it got that way. And then it got to
Wow.
where it wasn't even any communication at the pickups, just like, all right, I love you to my daughter.
I just hit my head.
Yeah,
on the
there's a mic
microphone.
there.
I'm like all interested. I'm focused.
Yeah. But yeah, so it can go that way. And for me, it really, really didn't change. There was one pivotal time and this is why I called it the co-parenting roller coaster.
Okay.
'Cause we've had our highs. Right now, we're here.
Yeah.
But I know that it just takes one comment, one situation, one mishandled opportunity to start to nosedive.
Yeah.
And so it's like a roller coaster. You're up and down, twists and turns. And, there was a pivotal moment about a year ago now, where we were at a back to school night, and things were super tense, and my daughter's mom just made some comments toward my wife that were not cool, just because it was like this, we were at odds, and she left, and it was my daughter's night to be with us, so my daughter was just crying, and I'm like, well, what's wrong? She's like, I don't like it when you guys fight. And I just looked her in the eye and I said, sweetheart, I don't know what to tell you. I'm not fighting with your mom right now. We're not on good terms. I'm not mad at your mom. I said, and I don't know what to do. I've tried to have conversations. I don't know what to do. I said, but the only thing I know to do, and you can do it too, is to pray.
Yeah.
And so we started praying about it, and my wife started praying about it then, and we've seen the product of that.
That's good.
And yeah, so it just turns into, it does. It sounds funny to be like, well, what do you do in that situation? Pray.
Well, but I think if prayer really does make a difference, and and I don't care who you are, if you have an understanding of that, because everybody says prayer changes things. You've probably seen the big orange poster on the side of the freeway or whatnot. I don't know if they have those all over the nation, but they have them here. They have them here. Yeah. So prayer changes things. So in that situation, it truly did. Mm-hmm. And I think when we have a communication, like me and my wife did our thing a couple weeks ago called It Takes Three. Yeah. So you have to have that injected. You have to have that Jesus injected into the relationship, and because like I said, I have to say this, I've been married for 30 years to the same woman. We've struggled over time, but we've never had to parent a child that wasn't ours. Right. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's why I'm probably sitting here just like fascinated by what you tell me.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's but then once you start, God has a way of when you are praying about something, not only answering that, but shifting your mindset.
Yeah.
And so nice. It turns into now the mindset is, and it's been this way for a long time, where me and my daughter's mom have been able to just look at situations and go, okay, what's the best for our daughter? Take my feelings out of it, take your feelings out of it. What's the best thing for her?
Yeah. Okay.
We lose sight of that sometimes.
Okay.
And praying over that situation does kind of flip and go, okay, well, what is the best thing for her? I may be acting selfishly. I may be looking out for my interest, and I haven't even taken her mom's feelings into consideration at this point.
Yeah,
so, let's do that. Let's reach out, and it's something I've talked about a few times, where the more that you put yourself in somebody else's shoes, the more that you consider somebody else's feelings, the easier it is to understand their actions.
Nice.
And that they may be misunderstanding your motive or your action. But yeah, that things can get bad, but they can get real good real quick too.
And I think that's because you've gone beyond the Disney dad, which I'm familiar with. I had a lot of friends who said, I'm going to go see my dad when I was growing up. I'm going to go see my dad. Well, what are you going to do? I'm going to be with him over the weekend, and we're going to Disneyland. Yeah. And then
I might get in trouble for saying this, but my wife's dad was that way.
Okay. Yeah. But that's if that's how you're doing it, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I think it has to go beyond that, and where you actually have to be a part of the person, you have to be a part of the family, and be able to raise the child with communication between both sides, and actually raise the child in comparison to just babysitting.
Yeah.
And I think
it bugs the heck out of me when parents say that they're babysitting their kids.
Oh yeah,
I hate that.
I remember somebody said that to me one day. I got to babysit my kids. I said, they're your kids. You father them.
Yeah.
And he got all mad at me. So I was like, I wasn't the best dad when my daughters were first born. Mm-hmm. I was 19 years old. I didn't know what I was doing.
Who is a good dad right away?
Yeah, that's true. I don't think anybody really is. It takes time to figure that out.
Yeah,
and
I'm still figuring it out.
I spent a lot of time, not being home, and almost paid the price, and we came close, but prayer took care of that, and brought me and my wife back into alignment, and back as one. So I never had to be in that situation, but I know it's been thought about.
Yeah.
Because I was always like, you know, in my life, it's been, you know, I go out, I take care of my kids, I do this, I pay the bills, and I do that. And I came to a point where I lost my job. I had a really, really high paying job, and I lost that position, and my wife actually took over, right?
Okay.
And now she makes all the money, and and I sit around, and sometimes I get that feeling of, well, I'm not the breadwinner anymore, you know, but I've gotten over that now. But you know, I've gotten to that point where, but she allows me, and don't tell my wife I said that. She don't allow me to do nothing. No. but we communicate and we talk, and then we make a decision. Because when I was raising my kids, I always had to be the bad guy.
Yeah.
So we'd go disappear for a half an hour. The kids would sit in fear, you know, and then I would come out, blah, blah, blah. This is what's happening. You're grounded or whatnot, and so on and so forth. And blankety blank blank, right?
Yeah.
And so here, now this is leading up to something. So I could imagine. So I go shove my kids in their room. They're grounded. Now next week they have to go to their dad's house or their mom's house, and all of that can just go to nothing really quick. Is that something that you have to? That's a motorcycle outside.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. But is that something that you have to deal with? I know your situation may not. I don't know, but is that it? So now they come home, as I know you mentioned, they come home and they might have a little bit of an attitude problem. But if you just disciplined them and said you cannot go do this, and this, and then mom comes and picks them up, you know, what would you say to the parent that now has to deal with that?
Yeah. When we didn't have open lines of communication, you know, there was really no way for me to just be like, hey, she did this. This was the ramifications for that action. This was her punishment. Just so that you know, if she says anything about it or whatever, gave a little backstory. But when we weren't talking, you know, I couldn't do that. And there would be times where something would happen, you know, at her mom's. Kids are kids. And, you know, I think there was one time where she was trying to help mom cook and she got like a burn on her finger. Well, I didn't know about it until I had her and there's a scab. I'm like, well, what happened? Oh, are you questioning the way that I parent? And so it can turn into that real quick. So that's where, you know, being able to have the communication is really, really key. I know that my situation is unique in that I'm able to have that communication, and I know that not everybody is. But yeah, communication's huge.
Yeah.
It's just so big. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, if that, and sometimes I think that's the communication is the bottom line and answers a lot of questions to anything in life.
Yeah.
You know, when I like to think of, you know, Jesus communicated to his apostles this, you know, and then they went and did this.
Yeah.
And then we continue, since you mentioned this earlier, we continue in communication with God through prayer.
Yeah.
Right. So no matter what situation we're in or in development of, and the places that we're headed, if we're not praying about it, we're going to see issues along the way.
Yeah.
Because then we can't even bother to listen for an answer if we're not bothering to ask the question.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, so I think that's, so if that's the biggest key is communication and prayer, I think you do, like I say, coming from a position where I really don't know. I mean, my parents were divorced, you know, and I saw my dad, and, you know, basically I went and raked his backyard. You know, I was like, hey, come do chores for me.
Yeah.
You know, you know, so, you know, or it was one of those, if and then he actually helped me out when we got married. I actually moved in with my dad when me and my wife got married. Okay. You know, and my mom was doing whatever she was doing at the time, you know. So I had to live through that, but I was a teenager at the time. So if I wanted to go see my dad, I could just go to his house. Right. You know, it was a little bit different. I didn't have to be dropped off and fly 3 states, you know, or any of that kind of stuff. Yeah. To see that kind of stuff happen. So it was just natural. Oh, I'm going to go to dad's house. Yeah. You know, whoever had the most food is where I went to.
Who's going to feed me?
Who's going to feed me? I lived at my mom's house, but I knew my dad had the good lunch meat, you know. Nice. So I would go over there and make a sandwich.
Dad shopped out of the counter, not the Carl Buddick.
Unfortunately, it's true. Because I've been to your house and you know, we go to church together, or we did when that campus was still had a building, you know, and that sounded kind of negative. Temecula still exists, you know, it's just due to COVID we're online, whatever, you know. So So we would go and go to your house and we'd spend time together. And I think watching you do certain things, you know, because I would like personally, if back in the old days, I would have grabbed my kid by the back of the neck, chucked him in the car and left.
Yeah.
You know, or throw him in the room, or but you do things so peacefully.
Yeah.
And you know, I gotta say I only see you during those certain times, but during those times, I'm like, man, you just walk up to your kid and you talk to him.
Yeah.
You know, and even today, I yell at my grandkids because that's something, you know, they get out. But I'm a grandpa now, and I'm like, I'm supposed to just sugar you up and send you home, but they live in my house, so it's kind of not smart to do that.
Yeah. You can't sugar them up and send them to the other room because they'll come back.
They come back. You know, so
when you're just a doorway away, it's a little bit different than down the street.
It's a little bit different. So but just watching you do certain things, you know, and actually communicate with your kid. Now they're old enough to communicate with. They're not 2-3-year-olds, you know, but they're old enough to communicate with. And you wait for a response. It's really nice to see that, to be honest with you, because like I've seen so many things where just people yell, and you know, I've seen parents smack their kids. You know, I've seen that kind of stuff. And in comparison, it's just, to me, it's a blessing to be able to go, you know, I know a guy that really, I feel, is going to raise really good kids.
Yeah.
You know?
So it's funny that you say that right now, because that's actually something that you've said to me, and this was probably 2 years ago now.
Okay.
That has stuck with me, where sometimes I will feel like I'm just falling short, not hitting the mark, like, wow, I'm sucking at this dad thing. And then I just remember that you said that. And so it's like, okay, well, other people see this differently than I see it. So maybe I'm being a little hard on myself, or maybe I'm falling out of that and I need to move back into that alignment.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
And that's actually been one of the things that gave me the confidence to speak on parenting, is what you just said, because you said almost the same thing to me a couple of years ago when you were at my house. You kind of said to me, you know, it's one of the biggest blessings, I think these were yours, one of the biggest blessings since getting to know you is watching you parent your kids. And it floored me, because I don't always feel like a good dad.
Well, I don't.
So when somebody gives you a comment like that, and I think in a twisted, weird, like having that feeling of not feeling like I'm doing good probably makes me a good dad, because I'm pushing myself to be better and improve.
Yeah. If you're thinking about it, it helps you, because I was not. I'll be straight honest. I did not. I'll put it this way without getting myself in trouble. I did not discipline correctly. Okay, and you can ask my kids about that. They'll be more than happy to tell you. But the CPS can't do anything now. They're all over 18. You know, so it wasn't that bad. It wasn't that bad. But I did not. I didn't. My kids didn't like me. You know, and you could probably talk to them and they'd say, hey, if you went from this point to this point, did you like your father? They would say no. I was afraid of him. You know, and it was not the person I am today is definitely not the person I was. And I think, because if you don't mind me asking, I don't even know how old you are.
I'm 35. 35. Yeah.
So when I was 35, my kids were already, I think they were, man, how long ago was 35? Now I'm feeling old, bro. I'm not saying that I thought you were older. I'm just thinking to myself, where were my kids at when I was 35? Because I had just gotten released from the job that I was at, I think.
Okay.
And that was such a major shift in the way I parented my kids, because I did some good things with my money, and I took a year off of work.
Okay.
Which was not smart. Which I found out because the recession hit, like when I was supposed to go back to work. So it was a bad deal. But I actually got through that time frame. I was working as not working, but I was a youth pastor. So I was in the process. They accepted me as I was and worked me through the process. So I thought that's, you know, a lot of churches that the church I went to back then recognized, hey, this guy's is going through a shift, and let's give him some opportunity. And so I was basically an assistant youth pastor. I was helping out the other guy, you know, and then actually became the youth pastor over time. But during that year that I took off, I actually got to raise my kids. You know, I was not out running around. I had a different focus in life. And I think if you ask my kids, they would go, yeah, at that time, this is probably about where my dad started shifting. He quit throwing things across the house and doing weird stuff, you know, being angry all the time. And, you know, because I actually stepped into relationship with Jesus as compared to just knowing who he is.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a big difference there.
Yeah.
And that changes your parenting patterns, you know?
Right.
And so you start to realize, you start to think about, oh crap, am I a good dad?
Yeah.
You know? And if that's, and I think if you're conscious about that, whether the child is yours, you know, or from another marriage or from whatever, if that's your focal point is being able to say, well, Jesus is in my life and I want to reflect that onto my children, because your children will imitate you whether you tell them or not.
Right.
You know, they start to see things. I think it's Galatians 5. It says, be imitators of Christ. And it says imitators because we see what he did as comparison to doing what he said.
Right.
That actually makes a difference, because we imitate what we see.
Yeah.
So if we're focusing and trying to be a good parent, you know, no matter how you're parenting, you know, and we catch that,
Yeah.
you know, I think that makes a big difference in the way our kids figure out who they are.
Yeah.
In the long run. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So there was something else too that just in this whole communication and talking, and there were some people, like I said, you kind of influenced my confidence in doing what I'm doing now with the podcast. But there was somebody else I was kind of narrow-minded. I'm just going to talk about co-parenting.
Yeah.
And I had a friend who, this is Yua, hi. He kind of made a comment about me doing a podcast about blended family issues, and not just the co-parenting, so my biological child and the issues that I deal with her mom, but the whole blended family, all of it. And so I think it, you know, just in the same thing, being imitators, and listening, and, you know, when people are talking, you know, we're talking about prayer. Yeah, we're going to get an answer from God, and sometimes it's going to be through somebody else.
Yeah.
So it's important to listen when people are kind of speaking into your life, and if you feel like you have something to speak into somebody's life. It's funny that you said what you said, because I was already planning on bringing that up. But you said almost verbatim what I was going to bring up.
All right.
You know, so it's one of those things that if you feel like you have something for somebody, tell them.
Yeah, that goes along with, and that's why I think that's one of the reasons why I started this, is because I believe I have something to say about whatever I feel like saying about, you know, and I know some people are like, because I know I'm not famous. I don't have this isn't a big deal. And if it goes that direction, great. Well, by the way, thank you everybody who's listening and watching and all that stuff, because without you guys, I wouldn't be sitting here right now. I wouldn't have continued it, you know? Yeah. And, but just to see that people listen, you know, and if you go out and you do your thing, people will continue to listen, you know? And, you know, I think your space in the podcast world, you're going to see a lot of growth here real quick, because not just because of the content, which is everybody pushes content.
Yeah.
But so your content is good. Don't worry about that. But because you're truthful and you're honest and you're real, and that makes a huge difference. And people, I think more people are more apt to hear that honesty, you know. And that, I think that comes from, one, you know God. I know you know God.
Yeah.
You know, Jesus is your friend, you know, and you've gotten to a point in your life where you can say, you know what? Cuss word, I'm going to do what I want.
Yeah.
And I believe this is what I'm supposed to do, and I'm going to do that, you know. So I just, probably not the best way to put it, but that's the first thing that jumped in my head.
And it's funny though, because it's something that, you know, when podcasting was still a relatively new thing, I was in a place in my life where I wasn't in church. So at that point, I still am a pretty big Kevin Smith fan.
Okay.
And so I listened to just about everything he put out at that point. And he was just real big on, you know what? Everybody's got a story. Everybody's got something to say. And in all reality, with the phones that we're walking around with, we all have the capability of recording a conversation and putting it out into the world.
Yeah.
And so go, make something. Just share. Because what I'm learning now with putting myself out there and hearing from people, co-parenting and step parenting in blended families is something that's very common. It's just not something that people talk about.
Yeah, and I don't think it's a hidden subject, but I think it's a subject that is, it's middle, you know, because it's almost commonality.
Yeah.
And
unfortunately,
and everybody deals with it in their own way. I'll deal with it however I deal with it, you know. But really, I think there's, you know, in the blended family, because I've seen so many, the pastors of our campus, blended family,
right?
You know, and without, I don't want to go into details there, but you know, you think, you start to go, who belongs to who, you know,
right?
And in order to focus and get all that and actually call it family, and actually have communication with true family, no matter how we're connected to each other, you know, to be able to talk about that and actually put it out there, I think that's fantastic.
Yeah,
you know,
and that's when blended family is done right. You don't know that it's blended family.
Yeah, nobody would know.
We actually had a family that was going to our church that I didn't know. That two of the kids weren't. The father. I thought they were his kids. I found out farther along that they were his stepsons, and I was like, you guys are doing blended family, right? Because I didn't know that you were a blended family.
And that's the way it should be. It should be recognized. Oh, that's mom, that's dad, that's child, that's you know, and it's family. Family's family, you know. And there's some families that are not even blood connected because of whatever situations people have been put out there by themselves. And they get connected with somebody, and it becomes family. You know. And seeing that whole picture come together, and listening to some of the stuff that you've had to say over your, 15, 20 episodes now?
I think I hit 19.
19 episodes?
Yeah.
So go listen to those, because in between all the good stuff, there's even more good stuff. You know, and you know, so and that's why, because I listen to it, because I've had people come and ask me, hey, what should I do? Hold on, let me go listen to this podcast.
and that's I think one of my biggest things with it though has been, I realize and I understand that everybody's situation is different. And everybody's situation is not my situation, and that's ultimately my goal, is to do this on my podcast with other co-parents, with other step-parents, with me and my wife and another couple.
Oh, that'd be good,
you know, so that we can just get different points of view and share different stories. And
there you go.
You know, it's exciting. So, you know, we've talked a little bit about numbers, just to kind of track. Okay, we're growing. So it was like about 3 weeks ago that I was like, it is. About 3 weeks ago, I was like, oh, you know what? In my 16, I think, episodes at that point, I'm like this close to having 500 total listens. And I was like, that's going to be a big deal, 500.
I think it's this one.
Yeah. I was excited. I'm like, all right, cool. Countdown to that number. 3 weeks later, I've hit 600.
Nice.
And so I'm like, okay.
Now I'm jealous because you're doing better than I am.
This is, well.
I just hit 750. I'm at 30 episodes.
We're right about the same. But that's amazing. So here we are, two guys that decided to do this. Between the two of us, we've had over 1,300, almost 1,400 listens. I don't know how many people that is. I'll tell you, when I started looking at where people are listening from, I expected it all to be Southern California. No. I'm at the point now, I think I've hit half the country. 14 different countries, and I'm just looking at it going, I'm just a guy that decided to share.
And that's exactly the point. Is, you know, hey, if you got and if you're listening right now, if you got something on your mind that you think needs to get out there, put it out there. And one of the things I remember telling Chris is, you know, stick a microphone in your iPad, in your iPhone.
That's an iPhone that you don't have a cellular contract on, so it's kind of an iPod, but it's an iPhone, so it's an iPhone. Just created a new term. Go trademark it before Apple does.
I know, everybody get on board. But and I told you, just record something. You know, and I think I gave you some resources, because I had already started mine. You know, go to Podbean, go to Anchor, or go to whatever these places are. And get yourself connected to them. And just do it.
And that's the thing. Like anybody, for real, if you have something to share, share it. I record my podcast. I just do audio because it's easier. To be frank, there's a less post production. So it's me, a laptop, and a USB mic.
Nice.
And the episode that I had my wife on, we used some different mics, but you can do it. If I can do it,
Yeah.
you can do it.
Yeah.
So go do something.
And I think that's that. And like I said when we started all this, is if you believe you're called to do something, just do it.
Yeah.
You know, and it took me a long time to understand that. And if you're on board, we're gonna have to shut down here in a minute.
Yeah.
If you're on board with just being able to just go for it,
Yeah.
that's really the first things you need to do. Because I know I talk a lot about taking first steps and going towards your dreams and pushing towards those kinds of things. And I'm sitting across from someone that has done that.
You know,
and you're reaching nations. You know,
Wayne Gretzky said you miss 100% of the shots that you don't
that
take.
you don't take. Yeah. And
it,
it's 100% true.
Yeah.
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 So I think that's, and to look across and go, because I know I'm not really good with accepting people telling me I did something or helped them. You know, I'm not that kind of guy.
Yeah.
I'm not like, look what I did. You know, that's just not me. I don't need to be employee of the month. You know, and but when you told me, because I believe you told me this, said I wouldn't have started this if you didn't start yours.
Yeah.
You know,
I had the USB mic
Yeah.
probably 8 months before you started your podcast.
Yeah.
I just wanted to be perfect when I started. And
Yeah.
I decided, heck with that.
Yeah, you should
Let's
go back and listen to my first one. It sucked rocks. Throw a straw. But it sounded. I mean, I put together a bunch of crappy equipment that I had left over, you know, at my house, and just made something go. And that's really no intro, no outro, no thought. Just
and for me, I
just put it
still
out
don't
there,
have.
you know,
I
and-
still don't do an intro.
Yeah.
It's just me.
Yeah.
Introducing what I'm going to talk about.
But I think that's being able to just do that, and your subject matter, I think, is something that everybody, oh my God, is something is something that everybody needs to hear, even if they're not co-parenting.
Yeah.
Because the information works for a parent.
Because it's something we kind of talked about on the way over. There is a very biblical undertone to everything that I share.
Yeah. Yo,
Cooperate,
absolutely. Yeah.
Listen.
Yeah.
Think about others.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there's
All we need is love. That was a great episode, by the way. I love that one. But I'm also a big Beatles fan. So, but all of that is fantastic, and because you communicate in a way that says, "Hey, this is what I do." That doesn't mean you have to, but it's a good way. And God's behind it, and God's working in it, and God's functioning in it, and pushing it forward and making great things happen. Parenting skills are parenting skills.
Yeah.
Whether they're a stepchild or a blended family, whether they're from somebody else, and all that kind of stuff. If family's involved and you're praying about it, your parenting will be parenting.
And ultimately, parenting skills can be leadership skills.
Yeah.
You know,
Absolutely.
It's pretty universal.
Yeah.
So until next time, keep your hands and feet inside the vehicle and enjoy the ride.
Ride on. Ride on.